everyone, I'm Meg Tucker from Cook with Meg, and today I'm going to teach you how to make a basic pan sauce called a gravy. A gravy is an amazing way to make a sauce that's so simple and elevate a regular delicious dinner to a super fantastic special occasion dinner. And it only takes 5 ingredients in about 5 minutes. Are you ready? Okay, let's begin. The first thing that I always teach in all of my Cook with Meg classes would be to have your recipe near. So I print mine out and I keep it with just a little clip. It's going to be beside me. You will see me glancing at it. But it's really important as a cook in the kitchen to read your recipe before you start from top to bottom. If you have questions, figure them out before you're standing at the stove. And then of course, to have all of your ingredients ready to go. This is also a really good opportunity to see, ooh, I don't have that, but could I use that instead? And that's why I'm here today to tell you that we can use many different ingredients and we can all arrive at the same destination, which is Flavorville and delicious gravy. Now, some of you might say, isn't gravy something that we only have on holidays? Maybe Thanksgiving, we get a little gravy and put it on our chicken or our turkey, or maybe it's a holiday like Christmas or a special occasion. Sure, that's a big gravy that normally happens from the juices, or we call them the drippings, from a roast or from a turkey that maybe we've roasted in the oven. But a gravy is actually something that you can make without even having any of those things. Let's say you're having mashed potatoes and you feel like putting gravy on them, or you're making French fries and you want to dip it in a little gravy, or maybe you've got some pork chops and you want a gravy for those pork chops. You can actually make it just using some basic ingredients without having to go through the process of roasting a whole turkey or a piece of beef. So we need a few items. The main item that we need today would be broth. You might hear it called broth, it might be called stock. It's all virtually the same thing. The process in how they make it, one uses boiled down bones of things, whether it's beef bones or turkey bones or chicken bones, and then one uses the bones with the meat still on it. Don't worry about any of that. Just know that you need to get some broth or some stock. Today, it's quite dark. This is a concentrated version, but it is a chicken broth. So if you've got a broth that looks like this that comes in a little pack, that one works. Maybe your broth is a vegetable stock mix that is in a container that's a powder, totally works. Maybe yours comes in a little packet. This is a chicken bouillon packet. Maybe it's a cube. You've got little cubes that you unwrap the foil and you dissolve them in water. This one, this guy, and this friend would all be dissolved in hot water. So you would just follow the package directions. It would tell you how much to put into a cup. Add really hot water or boiling water even, be careful. And then you would stir it together to get a finished product that would be this. This happens to be a convenient version that you can just pour out. Some of the bigger Tetra packs work too. It all works. My point is, it all works. So broth or stock is one of our main ingredients. We're gonna put this here so I don't knock it over. We also need butter or fat or margarine. You could even use oil for this. We need a fat, and we need all-purpose flour. You could use a different kind of flour. Most houses would have some all-purpose regular flour. Totally works. Ultimate would be spices. In this little dish, I have a combination of, let's see, I have 1 teaspoon of onion powder, a 1/2 teaspoon of dried thyme, which is kind of lemony and yummy and nice, and a 1/2 teaspoon of ground up sage. I won't get too close. Whew, you don't want to breathe that in too quickly. But when you smell it, it smells amazing. It literally, to me, smells like the holidays or a nice fall day. Poultry seasoning also works. If you have any sort of a poultry seasoning blend, anything in your cupboard or your pantry, Sage works, rosemary works, thyme works, marjoram works, poultry seasoning works, it all works. The reason that we ultimately want to, if you have them, add a little bit of extra spice, it makes a regular, again, all about building flavor, it makes a regular 4-ingredient sauce elevated. The more depth of flavor we can build, the more layers of flavor we can build, the better. And our good friends, salt and pepper, will join the party as well. So there we have some salt and some pepper. And that's it. Are we ready? Let's go ahead and make a gravy. We ultimately just need a saucepan. Now you might think, Meg, that's a pretty big pan. This is called an everyday pan, and the reason that I'm using it is because it is bigger and wider and open and you can see it. But just a regular, like a pan like this, a saucepan, something that you would make a soup in, simple, easy. That is all you need to make gravy. This makes about a cup-ish worth, but if you want to double this, if you're having a big dinner and you want more gravy, or you want to put some leftover gravy into the freezer, yep, gravy can freeze, or in the fridge, double this. You would just literally double everything that I'm showing you. The other thing we need is a whisk, but if you've seen this before, I need to be careful. I do need to get a plastic whisk that's not going to damage. This is non-stick, so you're going to see me doing it very gently because I don't want to scratch the surface. And then of course my trusty spatula, that works as well. A wooden spoon will work too. Whatever you have, we make it work. Are you ready to make some gravy? Okay, let's go. So burner on. This is an induction burner, which heats up really quickly, but it allows me to cook right here and look at you. If I were at my stove, I'd have my back toward you. So that's why I'm using this guy. All we're gonna do is put it on medium-low heat. Now this goes 1 to 10. I have it on about a 3. And I have my first 2 ingredients. Guys, it's so easy. 2 tablespoons of butter, 2 tablespoons of flour, and a cup of broth. That's ultimately what we're using. So there are my butter chunks. I had butter in the fridge. If you have margarine, you're gonna measure out 2 tablespoons of butter or margarine, plop it down into your saucepan, and you can use a whisk or you can just use your spatula. And we just wanna start to get this melted. I suppose if you were in a really big hurry, you could put this in the microwave first and pour in melted butter, but to me, that's just an extra step. I'm okay to stand at the stove, clean hands in the kitchen. We clean as we go. Once we finish with an ingredient, we do put it away. But this moves pretty quickly. So I will tell you that if you are making this, you likely don't have a lot of time to leave. Don't leave your pan unattended. That's safety first. So we're melting this butter. This, I believe, this is salted butter. If you had unsalted margarine or unsalted butter, you definitely will want to add a little pinch of salt, but remember that broth we're going to add? Broth is pretty salty. So we want to make sure we're not over salting. Hands in the air if you've ever had gravy that is way too salty. We've all had it, and you can fix it, but it's a little tricky. We always say that it's easier to add more, it's way harder to take it away. So let's just get that melting. Now while the butter is melting, I'm going to talk about these spices. When you have a dried spice or an herb, it's a really good idea to add them while your butter is melted. Dried means all of the water from normally a beautiful plant that's green and lush, if that's the color of it, when they dry, you know what dehydration sounds and looks like. It gets very dried out and it turns brown usually because it doesn't have any moisture. So what we want to do, if you have some spices to add, the ones that we've listed, the onion powder, the thyme, the sage, you can go ahead and you can actually sprinkle those right into the butter as it's melting. And that is homemade, delicious tip number 1 on how to make your gravy that took you 5 minutes taste like you've been roasting a chicken in the oven all day, because what happens is all of those dried spices wake back up when they hit that liquid. They release their essential oils, and the oils are what contain all the flavor. So we always say when you're cooking, if you're using a dried spice, try to put the dried spice in at the very beginning to give it the maximum amount of cook time. If you have fresh herbs, maybe you grew them in a garden or you got them at the store, fresh you would add at the end. We don't want to cook fresh for too long because then they do get a little dark in color and a little wilty and not the best. So dry at the beginning, fresh at the end. So there we go. Already you can see my butter is melted, and it's like almost like a dark green color. It's the color of sage. That's good. That's what we want. So we're just gonna let that cook in the butter. We don't want to let it cook. We don't want to let it bubble and sputter and get in our way. But we do want to let it hang for just a minute or so. And while it's doing that, I'm going to measure out my 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. What I'll do, I have my flour. Here's my all-purpose flour. I have it in a canister. I'm going to dunk my big tablespoon down in. As I spill on myself, sometimes you get a little messy in the kitchen. It's all good. We can clean up. Then I'm going to take a knife and I'm going to flip it over so it's the flat underside, and I'm just going to drag the knife across, and that allows me to make sure, it's just a little bowl here that I'm putting it into, that I've got a nice even tablespoon. The great news is these can go down into the sink, and we've used it so we get to put the flour away so I don't forget, and there's my flour. You can have this pre-measured ahead of time. You can have everything kind of ready and waiting. But I had enough time while my butter was hanging out, getting to be BFFs with all of my spices. So there we have it. It literally, you guys, it smells like Thanksgiving. It smells so good already. It's not bubbling, but it is definitely melted and happy. When we get to this stage, I'm going to take this spatula out. I am going to switch to the whisk, but I'm going back to the spatula in a minute, and I'm going to take this 2 tablespoons of flour. So just remember, it's equal parts fat and flour. And what we're doing is we're creating what's called a roux, R-O-U-X. A roux is sort of the beginning, let it snow over the top. It's the beginning to a sauce. It's how we thicken a sauce. So very gently, we're gonna whisk that in. It's equal parts. So those equal parts are gonna create almost like a paste. I'm gonna show you what it looks like here. This is also the base on how we do a cream sauce. If you've learned how to make cream sauce with me, you're gonna see that this is very familiar. Gentle, gentle, gentle. It doesn't look like much because it kind of gets all soaked in. Look at that. Gloopy paste. Sort of like a greenish paste. While it doesn't look very delicious, trust me, it's going to be. So what we need to do is we need to let that cook. Again, I'm on medium-low heat. It's not bubbling, it's not sputtering. In a cream sauce, a basic white sauce or a cream sauce, we talk about not wanting to develop any color, i.e. we don't want it to get a dark brown. We don't want it even to go super golden. Now you might say, but Meg, I have sage and I have thyme and I have onion in here. How can I tell if it's changing color? The answer is you can't really tell. Not when you're making a gravy. And don't worry about getting color or not getting color, because we actually want to develop a bit of color when we make a gravy. We've seen gravy before. It's rich, it looks like caramel. It's a beautiful dark-ish sauce, depending if we're using a chicken stock or a beef stock. And so you do want to have a little bit of color, and even though it's really hard to tell, and I can't tell if it's changing color, I'm still being mindful that what's happening, I can hear it, it's cooking the rawness out of the flour. And that's the goal when you make a roux. We want to cook the raw taste out of the flour. Nobody wants to eat raw flour. Nobody wants to eat gravy that doesn't taste great. So we give it about a minute or two, gentle, gentle, gentle whisking until it is this paste, until it starts to smell really beautiful. And what I'm smelling is butter and toastiness and nuttiness, and I'm smelling the sage and the thyme, and it absolutely smells amazing. I'm sure my kitchen smells great. I'm sure your kitchen smells great. But guess what, friends? It's time to start adding in very slowly our 1 cup of broth. So I'm gonna add the first little bit. I'm gonna turn my heat up a little bit because I definitely need a little more heat on this. But what's happening is, oh, there it goes. Instantly, look at how much it thickened. Now it kind of looks like pea soup. So you just pour in a little bit, and initially it's really gonna grab hold of the flour and be quite thick. But we're gonna dribble and drizzle. Medium, low is still fine for your heat. It's starting to look like gravy. And we wanna now just continue to whisk. You see I'm adding it just a little bit at a time. We don't wanna overwhelm it. We wanna give each swirl, each whisk a chance for that flour and the butter to attach itself to the broth and to thicken and become smooth and silky. There's the rest of it. And I'm actually now going back to my spatula. If you're more comfortable to use your whisk, use your whisk. Please be careful you don't really quickly slosh this around. Otherwise, you'll end up wearing the gravy. And we want you to eat the gravy, not wear the gravy. And we're gonna give it another little bit of cook, probably another couple of minutes. I love a spatula because what it allows me to do, watch the motion. This is the spatula, this is the bottom of the pan. It really allows me to get in there and smush it down. And to me, I feel very, very happy when I'm doing this because I'm visually looking at it and I am getting rid of any of those little lumps and bumps. I call those lumpity bumpity. We want to get rid of those. Now I wear a black coat so you can see the steam. You might even see it rising in front of me. That's ultimately what we want to see. We want to see the steam rising. We don't want to bring this necessarily to a boil, but the term in the culinary world for right below a boil is called a simmer. A simmer is when you see those very slow, swampy bubbles, those baby bubbles that just hit the surface every few seconds. That's ultimately what we want. We don't need to boil it. Oh my gosh, this looks incredible. I will tell you that if you do have access to grabbing a couple of dried spices and adding even a quarter teaspoon, just a little pinch, what it does is it actually puts little bits of herb. You can see those little bits of spices through the gravy, and I'll tell you what, this gravy looks like we have cooked it all day. Now, if you wanted to take this over the top, let's say that you did have a chicken that you roasted in the oven or a beef roast that you cooked, and you do have what's called the drippings. So the drippings would be everything that remains in the baking dish at the bottom or the roasting pan. Maybe it's the juices, you see little bits of the spice. You could always add the drippings right now. This is where you would add any of those pan juices or drippings, and that will again bring this to next level flavor. So right now, I'm gonna taste it. It probably tastes amazing. We haven't even put salt or pepper, but if you had some drippings, you're actually putting that slow cooked goodness right into your gravy. So go for it, add it. You could add about a half a cup if you had that much. I can't with how good it is. I'm gonna add a little pepper. This literally tastes like I cooked it all day. It literally tastes like a holiday. Homemade gravy, so fast. Now, I am gonna add a pinch of salt. I have a little spoon, try not to put your fingers down in, but I want you to really taste it, and I want you to ask for a consensus from those in your house, because we definitely don't want to have this too salty. And my broth had salt in it, and my butter was salted. Your margarine would probably have salt in it, so you don't want to overdo it. That's it. I'm turning the heat off. I am rinsing my spoon. Never put a dirty spoon back into the same pan. mean, I suppose if you were the only one eating it, you could, but we always like to kind of clean that spoon. Oh, this looks amazing. Look at that. It is thick. It's so exciting. Spoon, I want to taste it one more time. As the cook, you get to taste it. You get to decide. Is it creamy enough? Does it need a little more pepper? Does it need a little more salt? Does it need to be thinned out? If it's too thick, you can add a little more broth. Unbelievable. It's unbelievable. You've made a homemade pan sauce or a gravy. What would I use this for? I would put this on a roast chicken. I would put this on French fries. I would spoon this over mashed potatoes. I would use this on pork chops. I would use this on some beautiful, yummy, roasty veg. It's gravy. What a way to take a simple supper, elevate it to very special. Rinsing the spoon one more time. This is the thing. I get making it and then I just have to try it again and again. I'm going to imagine this on mashed potatoes right now. Okay, hold on. One last taste. It's so good. I hope you love gravy and making gravy as much as I had helping you make it. We've got lots more recipes to come. For more about me, you can head to cookwithmeg.com. I want to just remind you that this will keep in the fridge. It will thicken big time. When it cools, it will almost turn the word like gelatinous. It will definitely not go to jello, but it definitely thickens. So when you go to heat this up, you do want to put it back into your saucepan. Let the heat go from low to medium. You never want to turn a pan straight on high. Let it heat up slowly. You may need to add a couple tablespoons of water just to kind of thin it out a little. Just be mindful that you don't add too much water because we've built this beautiful flavor. And if you feel like it doesn't have a ton of flavor by adding water, you're only diluting it. Now, I used a broth that was pretty concentrated, so you may tell me, you know what, Meg, it's good, but it doesn't taste super concentrated. You can always add extra of the broth, of the packet. So let's pretend that you're tasting it and you're thinking, you know what, it just needs a little more flavor. You can take a little more of this. Maybe it's a cube. You could break a cube in half, add it, continue to cook it, and let that concentrated flavor make its way throughout the pan, and that will bring out the extra flavor. So that's it. Now you know how to make a gravy. Until next time, I will see you in the kitchen. Be sure to clean that kitchen and enjoy your gravy, everyone. I'm Meg Tucker, and we'll see you soon.